morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar, How Your Email is Impacted by Spam Laws. I'm Jill, and with me today is Jennifer.
Hello.
She is part of our delivery team here at VerticalResponse, so she is our expert. We have lots of stuff to go over today. I know spam laws are pretty important when it comes to your email marketing and understanding how they impact you. So we have lots to give you today, lots of info to give you today. Just like every other webinar, there will be time for Q&A at the end. So if you think of questions along the way, go ahead and type those into the box that you see in your GoToWebinar window, and we will be happy to answer those questions at the end. There's plenty of time for Q&A today. We already had somebody send in a question this morning, so that's great, and we will be asking that later on. The other question is that we get at our webinars is this being recorded? And we are recording the webinar so that you'll be able to go back and take a look at some of this information if you need to. It'll be up on both of our help sites. We have 2 help sites. Probably later today. I think I have one meeting this afternoon, but otherwise I should be able to get those up there. And we'll also add it to SlideShare if you want to take a look at the slides. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So first of all, this is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk a little bit about what spam laws are in general. We're going to take a look at some of the laws around the world that could be impacting the emails that you're sending. Then we're going to talk a little bit about how that impacts you and what you need to do as an email marketer. We have some resources for you, lots of free resources here at VR, plus some more resources for you on the anti-spam legislation. And then, as I said, there's always time for Q&A. So with that, oops, I hit the wrong button there. There we go. So first of all, the spam laws, these are just some of them that are available. In the U.S., it's called CAN-SPAM. It stands for Controlling the Assault of Non-Solicited Pornography and Marketing Act. It's a mouthful, so CAN-SPAM. It's much better. It was passed in 2003, and there are a variety of things that are mentioned in there that you need to do with your emails when you're sending them, which we're going to go over in just a minute. Canada just implemented a law last year called CASL, which is Canadian Anti-Spam Legislation. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. Pretty much every country in Europe has their own anti-spamming law. Germany, I think, has probably the most restrictive one, but really most of them are starting to go that way. We're not going to cover each and every one of them, but if you understand how, for example, how CASL works, it should help you understand how most of the ones in Europe work. So this is a question we often get, or I often hear, especially when I'm doing presentations, people will say, but I'm a nonprofit, so the laws don't apply to me. And it isn't true. It doesn't really matter who you are. If you're sending email, you need to be aware of what anti-spam laws are and how they're going to impact you and how they impact your business. So does this apply to me? Yes, it does. So with that, Jen is going to take us through some more details.
Okay, so CAN-SPAM. In short, a lot of emails sent today, about 80% of them are spam. A lot of people send a lot of spam. So what they're doing is they're trying to get a hold of that and contain it. Basically, the CAN-SPAM law started around 2004, and it applies to most businesses in the U.S. that send email. What it does is it provides recipients of spam the right to opt out. So basically, when somebody sends an email, you have to have a clear unsubscribe link in the body of your email. And we have to honor those unsubscribes here at VerticalResponse. So when somebody clicks the unsubscribe link within an email, we have to honor that and remove them from the list. VerticalResponse does not allow customers to add in their own unsubscribe link. We put it in the footer of our emails. That way when somebody does unsubscribe, we have the power, so to speak, to make sure that they are really unsubscribed from your list. If you have your own unsubscribe link in the body of your email and they don't click our link, they're not unsubscribed from our system. So we just want to manage that. So we're only allowing one link in the body of the email in the footer, and that's a Vertical Response's unsubscribe link. Basically, you don't want to use any false or misleading header information. You don't want to use any deceptive subject lines. Whatever your email is about, your subject line has to pertain to that. So you can't send an email that your subject line says, you know, free sushi, and then your email is about, you know, 50% off your furniture at your store. It has to be matching the content in your email. You have to have a valid mailing address at the bottom of your email, and you have to tell the recipients how to opt out, which we take care of that for you, and we honor those promptly within 10 days. Vertical Response, the unsubscribes, when somebody clicks that, we unsubscribe them right away, but there is a lapse of 10 days where we have to abide by that.
And I think something important to note about canned spam versus some of the other ones that we're going to be taking a look at here in the next slides is that it doesn't talk about purchase lists. So it's really about giving people who receive emails that they don't want an opportunity to stop receiving them, but it doesn't necessarily curb some of the marketing tactics that people have used in the past. As we take a look at some other ones like Castle, that is actually explicitly written in the law.
Yeah, the difference between canned spam and Castle, canned spam, you can technically email anyone without his or her permission, although at Vertical Response you have to have an opted-in list to mail to. But under the law, you technically can email anyone without their permission. You just have to have an unsubscribe link where they can choose to opt out to not receive your email anymore.
And that's why the law is so specific about unsubscribe links and how long they have to be effective for and how long you have to take people off, because it does allow this where you can technically send to a purchase list.
So with Castle, that came into effect July 1st, 2014, and that's the Canadian canned spam law. Basically, that law is saying that everybody you're mailing in your list has to clearly have opted in. So they have
to... Or you have to have a provable business relationship, and you have to be able to prove it.
Yeah, that's the big thing. They want to see if there's any questions. They could technically, you know, come after you and see how you're collecting your list, and make sure that you do have an opt-in form where people can clearly opt in. You know, the box is checked and they're subscribing to want to receive your emails.
But otherwise, it's mostly like canned spam. There's no false headers. You have to have a from label and subject line that are clear and appropriate. You have to have an address. You have to have unsubscribe. All of that stuff is the same. But the thing that's different for Canada, and really most of the countries in Europe, you have to have an opted-in mailing list. So if you're mailing anyone in Europe, you pretty much have to make sure you have an opted-in mailing list. And again, if you're mailing through VR, you already have to have that. That's part of the rules for using our system. But for Europe as well, that they have the same sort of laws. I think the UK has slightly more like canned spam where they don't have specific info about purchase lists, but that'll probably change because they just came out with the rules about the cookies a couple years ago. So I'm sure this is not going to be very far behind for the UK, but...
I listened to a great webinar on Castle through Return Path, and basically what they're saying is anything before July 1st, 2014, they're not going to investigate anybody that you've been mailing to as long as you're honoring unsubscribes. It's going forward from July 1st. They want to know, they want to make sure that
you need to be really diligent.
Yes, yeah. Definitely.
And they also have a 2-year grace period. So you have about a year and a half now to get your lists in order so that in case anything happens when you're mailing to people in Canada, that you have all the information that's needed.
So even though you are emailing through Vertical Response, some customers you're mailing to may be in Europe, maybe in Canada, so you still need to abide by the laws, even though you're using a company that is in the United States.
Even if you're in the U.S.
Right.
Even though our servers are in the U.S. It's like, I've heard all of the questions. We have to be in compliance with the U.S. CAN spam law because our servers are here. But anyone sending email through us has to be in compliance with the laws of the recipient.
Correct.
So that's why it's important also to understand how these laws work so that nothing happens to you.
So this is a nifty little tidbit of information here. You can go to fightspam.gc.ca to see the full picture if you can't see it. But it basically tells you 3 things to think about when sending messages. It breaks down bullet points on what to do to give consent. Do you have the record of consent? It just explains the things to think about when you're sending an email.
And it's in a handy infographic.
Yes. So the EU, it's the European Union, and basically what it means, it boils down to you have to prove you have an existing business relationship for the contacts on your list. You need to be able to prove that you've adapted these opt-in practices. So, for example, they want to see clear opt-in on your email, on your website. If you don't have a website and you have a storefront and you have a piece of paper where people can sign in to get your newsletter or information about sales you're having, that's perfectly fine too. That's somebody signing up wanting to get your newsletter. So they take that into consideration too. It doesn't have to be just in a website. So the EU spam isn't exactly a law. It's for companies sending electronic communications to European email addresses. It's best to be in compliance to avoid penalties in any country. For the EU, a double opt-in is not required but recommended. So for like companies or for Germany, for example, they have really strict opt-in laws, but the EU, they're a little bit more relaxed on their opt-in laws. So violating these laws, they have really strict penalties. Basically, the U.S., you can be fined up to $16,000 or more for one person. So
if you have a list of a couple thousand, that could get really pricey.
Right. Vertical Response, we are a self-service tool. You sign up, you agree to our terms of service. By checking boxes when you upload a list, you're agreeing that your list is opted in. So basically, you know, even though you're using Vertical Response, you still could be responsible for these penalties if you're violating the law. Canada, they do include criminal charges, and their fines are hefty. It's up to $10 million. So that's a pretty hefty fine there. The UK is about $750,000, and in Germany they could put you in prison. Scary.
Yes. So watch out for your German lists. Just be careful.
For Vertical Response, our anti-spam policies are always the same. They haven't changed. We do not allow purchase list, rented, harvested, or third-party mailing list. You can only mail to people that have clearly opted in to want to receive your emails. The reason for this is people tend to complain and hit the spam button when they get unwanted email. And for us, that causes complaints to go up, on our IP reputation to drop, and then that could affect our good senders who have a opted-in list that people want to receive their emails, and then their emails start going into the spam folder. So there is definitely a bad effect of using a purchase list. So clients should only mail to people who have specifically requested to want information from that company. So now what? To mail in the US, you need to be straightforward in content and delivery. So again, you want to have a subject line that refers to the body of your email. To mail to Canada and Europe, you need to do that, plus have an opted-in list. I know this may be confusing, but with Vertical Response, we fall under that. We want everybody to use an opted-in list. It's compliance with the spam laws.
So I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but using Vertical Response, you're in compliance with the spam laws, not just here in the US. Because we require the opted-in lists, you're in compliance with all the other spam laws as well. So the important thing to remember, especially when you're mailing to countries outside of the US, is you just need to know how your list was built, and you need to be able to show how people get added to your mailing list. And as Jen said earlier, it could be that they are signing a guest book at your POS, as long as you have a record of how people are being added to your list, just in case a question comes up at a later date.
Yes, so keep all those pieces of paper if people are signing up at
Yep.
your storefront, just in case.
Okay, so what does this mean? So if you're using an opt-in form on your website, on your blog, on social media, somewhere like that, if you have a direct sign up at like a trade show where people can sign up to be on your list, at your POS, if you're giving people compelling reasons to sign up and you have great content and you're upfront about privacy protection, then you're in compliance with anti-spam laws and Vertical Response. You are good to mail. Woohoo! You don't have to dress like that, though. Yeah. If you're mailing infrequently, but you have a list and it's something you mail to on a regular basis, maybe your list is a little bit older, you're not sure where people came from, how they signed up. Maybe you took over the marketing duties at your job and you don't know how the people before you created the list. You just know that they've been mailing to it.
Sorry, real quick, we touched on this on our webinar last month, but if you're using an old list, we consider anything over 6 months, if you haven't mailed to them at all, we consider that old. We're not saying you can't mail to them, but what could happen is those email addresses that you have not mailed to within 6 months could turn into what we call spam traps. So if Hotmail, AOL sees an email address that hasn't been touched by a human in 6 months, they take those email addresses and they use them turn them into spam traps. So that's just an indication that spam traps hurt us. They cause problems for our IPs, our delivery rate. So there is definitely a waterfall effect of bad things that could happen with the old list.
And one of the things that you should consider if you're not sure how people have been added to your list is to consider reconfirming a sign-up. Just use an opt-in form, ask your recipients to reconfirm the sign-up. Again, especially if you're mailing to any of the countries that we've mentioned, because their laws are stricter than they are in the US. And if you don't have a record of the opt-in, then that could cause you issues later on. And at VR, we use the double opt-in process, which means they sign up on a list, then they get an email to confirm the link. That information is stored in your account, so if a question ever comes up, you have that information. Plus, double opt-in goes beyond what any of the laws say. I know there's a lot of question about the German law, but the easiest way to get proof that somebody signed up to be on your list is with the double opt-in, and so again, that keeps you in compliance with the laws around the world. If you're buying a list of email addresses from any source, known or unknown, I don't know why I have unknown on there. If you're harvesting email addresses on the web, if you're using a third-party list, which means you're working with another company and they give you their list to mail to, that's third-party. If you're selling or renting your customer database, then you are against the VR policies and anti-spam laws. That is no. And that guy's going to come and look at you just like that. No, you just need to make sure you know how your lists are built and that people have in some way given you permission to mail to them. That's really all you need to know. So just a couple reminders about creating your emails. So as Jen mentioned, we did a webinar last month about how to get your email delivered to the inbox, and we talked about each piece of your email, how that impacts, or what you put in there impacts how your email gets delivered to the inbox. So these are just a couple of things to remind you. Again, this isn't something that's necessarily against the anti-spam law. It can just be an issue with getting your email delivered. I think it's important that the content of your email is something that your readers are looking for. It will keep them from reporting your email as spam, which could later cause an issue. Keep your email with a balance of text and images, and always make sure your links are going somewhere good to a reputable website that you know. Bad links can cause a lot of problems, not only with email delivery, but it could cause issues later if people report your email as spam. If you want more help on this, we recorded that webinar, and it is up on a variety of places. If you go to help.verticalresponse.com and click on the webinar tab, it's up there. It's email delivery 101. And it's also on our help center. We have 2 help sites. It's also up on our YouTube channel under the webinars. So if you want to go take a look at that, that information is available. I think that's probably pretty helpful.
Well, I also don't think people really take into consideration what happens when you compose an email and send it off. It's just not, putting in the to, the from, and the body of your email, hitting send, and there it goes.
Right.
That's your job, to make sure it's all in order. But what happens behind the scenes is when it gets sent from here, the recipient side is looking at everything. It'll look at your from label, your subject line. It goes through a series of checks. And spam filters are getting tougher and tougher nowadays. So if it doesn't pass the checks, it'll go into the spam folder or out in space. We don't
know. Filtered out in general.
It just goes somewhere. With the HTML, you do want to make sure you're not pasting from Word. A lot of tags, and if they're not closed properly, if you're doing a free-form email, there is a lot of things in there that could get your email sent to spam. So something to think of.
Yes. So these are just some things to keep in mind. Your list should be opt-in, not opt-out. Opting out isn't the best way to build a list. And again, that is not an acceptable way to build a list through VerticalResponse. You need to send an email regularly so that your recipients don't forget that they signed up to get your email. Again, if you mail sporadically or you haven't mailed to them in more than 6 months, they might have forgotten they signed up to get your email and mark it as spam. Make sure your emails are branded well so people know when they open it that they've got the right information. Keep your list clean. Know where people are coming from when you're adding them to your list. And keep your emails relevant to what your recipients expect when they sign up. Again, content plays a big role in getting your emails to the inbox as well. As long as your readers are reading the email and interacting with it, that helps keep it going into the inbox. Also helps keep them from marking it as spam.
We had a sender here at Vertical Response who'd been mailing with us for years, and they got bought by another company, and they just went ahead and changed their from label to the new company and sent out the email without letting everybody know that they changed their company name, and their unsubscribe rate, their complaint rate went through the roof because people were like, who is this person?
Yeah.
And a lot of people were like, did you sell my, email addresses? So, it's okay if another company comes in and buys that company. It's just a good idea to let the customers know before you send a newsletter out.
And I think that's really key when it comes to your marketing when you're sending emails, is just let your readers know what's happening. One of the things that we often recommend is during Q4, if you're changing your mailing frequency, and many companies do, and I think a lot of people expect it, but if you mail once a month and all of a sudden you're going to be mailing once a week in November and December, that might be annoying to people, but if you tell them ahead of time, they'll know when it's going to start and when it's going to stop, and they can hang on until you're done sending that off, and if that's something that's annoying to them. But if you don't tell them ahead of time, they're going to be like, why are they spamming me so much? And they'll click unsubscribe or spam. So just communicating with your readers, just put a little blip in your email just to let them know about any changes that are coming in your email, and they'll be ready. So as we've mentioned a little bit along the way, the spam laws might be confusing, and let me just say, I have actually read the legal portion of some of these laws, and so it is really dry, and I can understand why you guys would not want to read that. The fun thing about Castle is you can read it in French or English, if you find that fun. But we're here to help you. Really, we are here to help get your emails to the inbox. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out and ask. You can just reply. You can even reply to the email you got for the webinar, because that goes to me, and I can answer it, or I can have Jen answer it, and we're more than happy to help you with that. VR can help you with the opt-in portion. I know we've talked about that a lot today, but when it comes to sending emails through VR in general or to any other countries, the opt-in portion is super important. And we, of course, keep you compliant with all those techie things like headers, unsubscribe stuff. You don't have to manage any of that stuff. We do it for you. All of the unsub information is in your account, so you'll see that, but we handle it for you, so you don't have to worry about, has it been done in a timely manner? Is the link active for 30 days, or how long? You don't have to worry about that. We take care of it for you. We've also created some guides for you. If you go to our website and then click on the More tab, you can see some of these. Design your email for delivery and response. 50 ways to grow your list. So again, I know it's important for you guys to do that. The ultimate guide to email delivery, email delivery, vertical response, and you. All of those are free. We also have a infographic you can get from the blog about email delivery as well. And these are some of the resources. I'm going to leave this up while we do Q&A. If you have more questions about CAN-SPAM, the FTC website has it. It's quite
lengthy.
Yeah, it's quite the website because it's the FTC. I was looking for a link, and the link was huge. So the easiest thing to do is just to go to that website and then search for CAN-SPAM. And they have very helpful information written in language that anyone can understand. They're really there to help. So if you have questions about sending emails for your business, they have lots of answers for you. Castle has lots of information as well. Again, the actual legalese is very dry and boring, but their website is super helpful. And they have lots of those infographics. We just had one, but they have a bunch of them to help you understand Castle. Europa.eu has information about the European or the EU directive. But if you're actually looking for information about specific countries, I think the easiest thing to do is go to Wikipedia and search for anti-spam laws, and they have a page that has a list of all the countries with spam laws or not, and then links to where you can get information about those specific countries. Like we said, Most of them are just like Castle. You have to have an opted-in list, and you have to be in compliance with the you can't do anything tricky with the content of your email or your subject line or your header or anything like that.
And the opt-out, you have to have the
yeah, the unsubscribe. Our blog has lots of information about delivery in general. We have, I think, a great blog post on Castle. If you're looking for more help on that, there's lots of information there, though. We do publish 5 days a week, so there's tons of info. If you look on the right-hand side, there's categories to help make it a little easier to find things. And then, as I said earlier, I'm going to put this up on SlideShare. Our deck from last month, Email Delivery 101, is also up there, so if you just want to look at the deck, you can. Otherwise, the recorded version of this will be up on our website or our help site later on.